Picture this: ancient Greece, 530 BC. A young wrestler steps onto the sand at Olympia and locks eyes with the man across from him. His name is Milo. He is from Croton, a Greek colony in southern Italy, but he trained using Greek principles in the Greek tradition and competed in the Greek Olympic Games. And he has not lost a competitive wrestling match in over a decade. He wins this one too. Then he comes back 4 years later and wins again. Then again. 6 Olympic titles in total. Historians who study his record have called him the most dominant athlete in all of ancient history. And here is the part that should make every modern gym-goer stop and think. Milo trained every single day. Now, if you have spent any time in a gym or read anything about fitness in the last 20 years, you know what the standard advice sounds like. Rest days are non-negotiable. Skip them and you will overtrain. Skip them long enough and your body will break down, your joints will ache, your strength will plateau, and your progress will stall. So how did a man who trained daily for over 2 decades become the most unbeatable athlete the ancient world ever produced? The comfortable answer is genetics. And that answer is convenient, because it means you do not have to think too hard about what Milo was actually doing. But when historians went back to the original Greek texts, they found something that did not sit right with that explanation. Milo was not grinding himself into the ground every day. What he was doing was something far more calculated. And in some very specific ways, far smarter than anything most modern gyms teach. His rest days looked nothing like yours. And that single difference between how the Greeks rested and how we rest today might be the most overlooked reason why so many people hit a wall with their training and can never quite figure out why. If you have ever pushed hard for weeks, done everything right, and still found yourself stalling, stay with this one. Because what the Greeks understood about rest and recovery will make a lot of things click into place. Around 200 AD, a Greek physician and sports scientist named Philostratus sat down and wrote one of the oldest sports coaching texts ever discovered. It was called Concerning Gymnastics. Buried inside it was a description of a 4-day training cycle that Greek athletes had already been using for centuries before he put it into words. He called it the Tetrad. When you read his description of it, even in translation, even 2,000 years later, it is immediately obvious that this was not guesswork. This was a precisely engineered system, built around a deep understanding of how the human body absorbs stress, recovers from it, and comes back stronger. Philostratus described it simply. The first day prepares the athlete. The second is an all-out trial. The third is relaxation. And the fourth is a middle condition. Now, here is where most people get confused, and it is important we clear this up right now. When Philostratus said relaxation, he did not mean lying down, doing nothing, waiting for recovery to happen passively. This is the critical distinction that separates the Greek system from modern fitness culture. The Greeks understood something we have forgotten. Relaxation is not the absence of movement. Relaxation is intelligent, purposeful movement at low intensity. Let me break down each day, because the detail inside each day is where everything interesting lives. Day 1 is not a warm-up, in the way we think of it. Instead, it is a series of short, explosive, high-intensity bursts, performed just long enough to fully wake the body up, and then deliberately stopped before fatigue has a chance to build. The goal here is priming. You are switching the nervous system on, telling your muscles what is coming, and preparing the body to perform at its absolute ceiling the following day. Then comes the hard day. Maximum effort, heavy loads, everything the athlete had. This is the day where strength is actually built, where the body is pushed past what it is comfortable with, forced to adapt, forced to grow. Because day 1 has properly primed the system, the athlete arrives at day 2. Fully switched on and capable of producing more output than they could without that preparation. Next is the day that separates the Greek system from almost everything modern fitness culture does. Day 3 is called relaxation, but let me be absolutely clear. This is not lying on a couch. This is not doing nothing. The Greeks did not rest passively. They moved, slowly, deliberately, at low intensity. Walking, stretching, light wrestling drills, massage, gentle activity designed specifically to keep blood moving through the muscles that day 2 had worked hard. This is active recovery. The Greek physician Galen documented these recovery practices in detail. He understood something crucial. The body does not recover faster by stopping completely. It recovers faster by staying in gentle motion. The waste products from hard training, lactate, hydrogen ions, metabolic byproducts are cleared out faster when blood is actively circulating through the muscles. The last day means moderate effort, neither easy nor hard. Things like technique work, skill refinement, and conditioning at a manageable pace. The body is not fully recovered from day 2 yet, but it is no longer fragile. Day 4 builds the work capacity that makes day 2 harder and harder over time, without the risk of breaking down. And then the cycle begins again. But here is what I have not told you yet. The reason the Tetrad actually worked, and why modern science has spent decades quietly confirming what the Greeks already knew. Once you understand the biology behind it, you will see exactly why your current rest days might be working against you. Here is one of the most important facts in all of exercise science, and it does not get nearly enough attention. Your muscles do not grow during training. They grow during recovery. When you lift something heavy, wrestle for an hour, or run hard across sand in the Greek summer heat, you are not building strength in that moment. What you are actually doing is creating tiny tears in your muscle fibers, microscopic damage that the body registers as a threat and immediately begins repairing. Specialized cells called APA's satellite cells fuse into the damaged fibers and rebuild them thicker and stronger than before. That entire repair process, the real work of getting stronger, happens after you finish training, not during it. Which means the quality of your recovery is literally the mechanism through which all your training becomes results. Train without recovering properly, and you are doing the hard part without ever receiving the payoff. The Greeks did not have the language of satellite cells or muscle protein synthesis, but they had 2,000 years of observational evidence, and they could see clearly what happened to athletes who rested well versus those who did not. Philostratus himself wrote critically about athletes who ignored the tetrad structure and trained at high intensity day after day. He watched them plateau, break down, and lose to athletes who were training smarter. Now, here is where modern science walks in and confirms everything they observed. Research published in sports medicine journals has found consistently that active recovery, low-intensity movement performed after hard training, clears metabolic waste from muscles significantly faster than complete rest does. When you exercise hard, your muscles produce lactate and hydrogen ions as byproducts. These build up, cause soreness, and slow down the next day performance. Gentle movement, the kind the Greeks built into day 3 of the Tetrad, increases blood flow to the muscles and physically flushes those waste products out faster than lying still ever could. One landmark study that directly compared active and passive recovery found that the active recovery group had measurably greater increases in growth hormone levels, upper body muscular endurance, and lower body 1-rep max strength over time. There is a hormonal dimension to this that explains exactly why the no days off, always push approach so often ends in a plateau. When you train hard, your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone. In the short term, this is useful. Cortisol helps mobilize energy and drives the training response. But when you train at high intensity without adequate recovery, cortisol does not drop back down between sessions. It stays elevated. Chronically elevated cortisol creates what researchers call a catabolic environment. a state where your body is breaking down tissue faster than it can rebuild it. Your strength stops progressing. Your joints start complaining. Your motivation drops. And no matter how hard you push, the needle stops moving. The Tetrad's 4-day rhythm prevented this from ever happening. Day 2 pushed cortisol high, deliberately and productively. Day 3 pulled it back down through gentle movement and active recovery. Day 4 kept the body active enough to maintain momentum without respiking stress levels. And Day 1 primed everything for the next hard effort. It was a hormonal cycle as much as a training cycle, and the Greeks had mapped it out intuitively, centuries before anyone had a word for cortisol. So the real question becomes, why did we abandon all of this? The honest answer is that somewhere along the way, modern fitness culture decided that effort was the only variable that mattered. More sets, more sessions, more intensity. If something was not working, the answer was always to do more. The Tetrad's logic, that calculated recovery is just as important as calculated effort, got buried under a culture that rewarded hustle and treated rest as weakness. But the body has not changed since 530 BC. The biology is identical. And what worked for Milo works for the same reason today. Which brings us to the most useful question left to answer. What does actually implementing this look like for someone training in the modern world without a Greek gymnasium or a wrestling pit in their back garden? Think about how most people train today. On Monday, they push hard. On Tuesday, they push hard again on different muscles. On Wednesday, they might take a rest day, meaning they do absolutely nothing. On Thursday, they are back in the gym, pushing hard. On Friday, hard again. On Saturday, maybe something light. On Sunday, full rest. And the cycle repeats, week after week, with no real structure underneath it. On the surface, that looks disciplined. 6 days of training, rest when needed, keep showing up. But when you map it against what the Greeks understood, something becomes obvious immediately. There is no rhythm. The hard days and the easy days are distributed arbitrarily, based on how sore someone feels or what muscle group they have not hit yet, not based on where the body actually is in its recovery cycle. The rest days are completely passive, which means they are slower at clearing the metabolic waste from the hard days. And because there is no day 1 equivalent, no dedicated nervous system priming, the hard days never reach the ceiling they are capable of. The body is either being pushed or it is stopped. There is no calculated middle ground, no bridge, no prime. A 2022 analysis of 17 studies found no significant difference in muscle development between people training 3 days per week versus 6 days per week, when the total training volume was matched. It was not the number of sessions that determined results. It was the quality of each session and the recovery between them. The Greeks already knew this. Here is what a modern version of the Tetrad actually looks like, and before you assume this requires overhauling your entire life, it does not. The principles are simple. The adjustment is smaller than you think. Your day 1 equivalent is 20 minutes of short, explosive work before anything else. Jump squats, broad jumps, box jumps, short sprint bursts. You are switching your nervous system on, not wearing it out. The Greeks called this preparation, and that word is exact. Your day 2 equivalent is your hardest training session of the week. Heavy compound lifts, such as squats, deadlifts, presses, and carries, performed with maximum effort. This is the day you go to your ceiling, because days 1 and 3 structurally support it. Do not split your effort across 5 hard days. Concentrate it. The Greeks understood that one true all-out session, properly supported, builds more than 5 moderate ones spread across a week. Your day 3 equivalent is your rest day, but you are not sitting still. You are walking for 20 to 30 minutes. You are stretching. You are doing light movement that keeps blood circulating through the muscles that day 2 worked hard. This change is the single biggest improvement most people can make immediately. Treat rest as intentional recovery. Your day 4 equivalent is moderate effort, technique work, accessory movements, and conditioning at a pace that challenges you without taxing you deeply. This day builds the foundation that makes day 2 more productive over time. It is the bridge, and skipping it is why so many people find that their hard sessions stop improving even when they are trying just as hard. Then, the cycle repeats. Modern fitness has more equipment, more nutrition science, and more data than the Greeks ever had access to. But somewhere along the way, it lost the thing that might matter most: the understanding that rest is not the absence of training. Rest is part of training. If you are not recovering with the same intention you bring to your hardest sessions, you are leaving the most important half of the process on the table. The ancient world figured this out a very long time ago. We are still catching up.